to
Good morning, teaching geniuses.
How are you today? We're so happy you're here. I'm Miriam.
And I'm Maxine.
And we're here to talk to you and share with you about tales of teacher transformation.
Here we go.
And how we can all become better teachers in our journey of teaching discovery. And we're so glad you can join us today because we couldn't do this without you. So thank you very much for taking the time today. So we're very excited about this. We have both studied quite a few foreign languages ourselves, so we know how difficult it can be.
Both to learn languages and to teach languages.
How many languages have you studied?
I've studied Spanish, French, and Hebrew.
Wow.
And what about you? What languages have you studied?
Well, I've studied Spanish, French, Italian, Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Nepali, Hindi, and I've also studied a little bit of Greek and a little bit of Cambodian, but that was too difficult for me. So what I really speak is about 5 languages, but English is our native language, so we're so lucky.
Yes.
So we know the difficulties with it. So let's see, what else are we going to talk about today?
Good question. So today we're going to move next to talk about reflective teaching
and the experiential learning cycle. Is reflective teaching part of the experiential learning cycle?
Yes, it definitely is. Reflective teaching is really part of everything we do as teachers.
Aha.
Yeah.
So when you say reflective teaching, I think of the word reflection, like looking in a mirror and, seeing how you look and so forth. Can you tell me a little bit more about reflective teaching?
Yes. So I would say, yes, that idea of looking in the mirror, if you think of looking in a mirror as observing yourself and your students and your classroom, that's the idea behind reflective teaching. So we observe what we do and think about how we can make it better.
So reflection is actually not just an image in a mirror. It's actually a mental process where we look back at our experience and our behavior and see how we can improve it. Oh, that's great. Okay. So
yes. So, and then the experiential learning cycle explains a little bit more about that process for continual improvement. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's do a little activity.
A little reflective
activity. But we're going to start by just thinking about the journey of the reflective teacher. And so we've been talking a little bit about learning languages and teaching languages. And so let's take a moment and just think for a moment, Miriam, about how you feel when you're learning languages.
Learning languages.
Yes.
Well, I think I feel nervous in the beginning. And then I often feel confused.
Okay.
Or like it's so much information and so many things to memorize and so many rules. So I feel confused, but overall, I feel hopeful. I feel hopeful that I can actually speak with those people in the new language, in the new culture, and open many, many doors and discover new things. So I'm hopeful.
Okay.
And what about you?
So wait, let's just review that, okay, for a second. So the 3 words you said were nervous, confused, and hopeful. Nervous, nervous, confused, and hopeful. So I would say that I feel excited because I love learning new languages. So I have a sense of excitement associated with that.
Mhm.
But then I also feel frustrated
Mm.
because there's a part of me that really wants to get to a next level. And sometimes I feel like I'm on a plateau.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel a little frustrated about that. But then ultimately, I feel very satisfied because it feels good to learn new languages and to learn new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
your three words would be excited,
excited,
frustrated,
frustrated,
and
and
satisfied.
satisfied.
Ooh, I like the
Yes.
satisfied part. Well, I think that's a really good question for our participants too.
Yes. So here we go. So maybe you want to write down 3 words to express how you feel when you're learning a foreign language.
Okay. Feel free to pause the video here if you need more time.
Yes.
But don't think about it too hard. Just write down the first words that come into your mind when you think about that.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. And so now the next question would be, Miriam, how do you feel when you're teaching a foreign language?
Well, I also feel nervous. That first day in the classroom, I'm horribly nervous.
I
I'm just
understand
so
that.
nervous. But then
Yes.
after it gets started, I'm okay again. And then I get really curious. I'm so curious about the students, how to help them, what activities we'll be doing. I'm very, very curious about that.
Hmm.
And then when the classes go well, I feel so grateful. Oh, I'm so happy and
Mm-hmm.
grateful that the students are learning and I'm having a wonderful opportunity to help them.
Great. So your 3 words are nervous, curious, and grateful.
Yeah.
All
What
right.
about you?
Nice. So I also feel very nervous when I start teaching.
Hmm.
I am nervous about if my students are going to like me, if I'm going to get along with everybody. So that can be a little nervy, makes me nervous. But then I feel once I get into the rhythm of teaching my students, I feel confident that I can help them improve their language learning
Mm-hmm.
and set them up for success.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when I feel that they're getting it, I feel very happy.
Oh, great. So really you and I have that nervous thing,
Nervous,
but then you feel confident
confident,
and happy.
happy.
Oh,
Yes,
nice.
exactly.
Cool. Okay.
So now it's your turn to think about 3 words that express how you feel when you're teaching a foreign language.
Yeah, and take your time. Feel free to pause, write those down, and kind of feel that feeling. Right.
Yes, pay attention, notice how you're feeling.
It's a
Yes.
reflection, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This
Oh,
is a
okay.
little reflective activity.
All right.
Okay, oops.
Well,
And then the next question for you, Miriam, is how do you want your students to feel when they're learning in your class? Three
how how
words.
do I want them to feel or how they do feel?
Which would you prefer to answer?
Well, I want them to feel confident. I want them to feel confident that they can really get this language. And I want them to feel involved, very involved. So they're actively involved in speaking and writing and doing the activities we're doing. And finally, I really want them to be motivated
Hmm.
about learning English.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a wonderful language, and I want them to feel like, oh, I really want to learn this. So motivated is my
Third word.
third
Okay,
word.
so confident, involved, and motivated are your 3 words.
Confident for my students. Yeah,
Yes, for
confident,
your students.
involved, very important, and motivated. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what about you? What's your three
So I
words?
would say the first thing is that I want my students to feel safe.
Oh.
So what that means is even when I start a class, I will tell them that I want my students to make mistakes because mistakes is important for learning.
You tell them you want them to make mistakes?
Yes, because that means they're trying new things and they're trying to do better. So making mistakes is part of, and making them feel safe to make the mistakes is what's really important. And then everybody feels okay when they make a mistake, because so often we get embarrassed and things like that when we make a mistake. And then the second thing is that I want them to be engaged. And I really do look at my students and make sure students are participating. I monitor their activities to make sure that they do feel engaged in what they're doing. And then finally, this isn't exactly a feeling, but I want them to have fun. I want them to feel good when they're learning English. So the 3 words would be safe, engaged,
and having fun.
And having fun. Yes.
I really like that safe thing, and that it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, that's just wonderful.
Yes, and very important to learning. If you think about it, when you or I or Miriam, when we get everything right, we're not really learning. We're showing what we already know. Yeah. And by making mistakes, we're showing where we need to work a little harder to learn that.
Right.
So now it's your turn. Take a moment and write down 3 words. And again, I would say how you want your students to feel, because this is that place that may be part of reflection for continual improvement as a teacher.
Yeah.
So because, for example, for me, my students don't always feel engaged, and then I have to do something different. And we'll talk about that in a moment too. So if you need to pause here to write down your 3 words, feel free to do that. We're going to move on to talk about the reflective, the experiential learning cycle.
Reflective learning is part. See, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yes. See, right, exactly.
Nobody's perfect, and if they are perfect, what are they doing here? Learning something new. So the experiential learning cycle is part of a process, but the reflective learning cycle is within or inside of that process too, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So let's use an example. Miriam, would you like to share an example of a teaching experience that you have? And then we'll translate it into the experiential learning cycle.
Oh, you want my most big mistake? Since it's safe to make mistakes?
It's
okay.
Safe to make
I have
mistakes.
a great mistake that I made in my development in my teaching career. So I was teaching in Taiwan, and I was about 28 years old. And that was a long time ago. But I had a class of high school students, and we were doing a video interview. So we had pairs, and everybody would interview their partner. We recorded it on video. Then we played it back. But we had an uneven number of students in the class. So I had to pair up with Mr. Wong. Well, when we showed the video after class, guess what happened?
Uh-oh, what happened?
Oh my goodness. I spoke about 80% of the time. I was supposed to be interviewing him, but I was talking my head off. It was ridiculous. I was so embarrassed. But you know what happened? From that moment, I decided, oh my goodness, teacher talk time. I learned about that. Now I'm really, really going to pay attention to teacher talk time and try to minimize my teacher talk time and maximize my students' talk time.
Beautiful. So now let's look at the experiential learning cycle and see how we translate your experience into the experiential learning cycle. So here we go. Here's a little bit of description. I'm going to just minimize us for a moment so you can read the words. So, Miriam, let's describe the experience. And you're going to describe the experience using just facts.
Okay, we were doing video interviews, and I partnered with a student, and I was supposed to interview him, but I realized that I did almost all the talking.
Okay, that's beautiful. You just said the facts of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Now, if we go to step 2, which is to analyze, what hindered or was difficult for your student in the learning process?
So what helped or what hindered? Well, what hindered my student is that he did not get much of a chance to talk.
Okay.
He had, I mean, it might have helped his listening, but I don't think that was the point. But in a way, it helped me make a huge realization. So it helped me go, oh, I never want to do that again. But it hindered his speaking a great deal.
Okay, so too much teacher. And so if you wanted to make that into a general rule about teaching, what would you say?
Well, minimize teacher talk time. Come up with activities and projects and games and interviews that help the students speak more. Really focus on minimizing teacher talk time to help the students learn to speak.
Yes. So the rule is more student talk time helps student learn.
Yeah.
And so then your action item moving forward is?
Well, I chose items and activities that really encouraged students talking, and I really learned to be quiet when I was talking with a student.
Okay, so the continual opportunity for you, continual improvement opportunity was more student talking, less teacher talking.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Well, now what about you? Do you have an experience that you would like to use for experiential learning cycle examples?
Yes, I do. And what I will do is I'll describe it and analyze it and generalize, make a rule, and tell you how I apply all in this process. So we'll do it using the experiential learning cycle.
Great.
So I was teaching my students something, I don't remember exactly what, but I noticed that my students were not engaged.
Uh-oh.
They looked bored.
Mm.
And how do we know when students look bored?
They look bored. They
yawn. They're looking not very.
Look at their watch.
Right. Look around the room. What's
Start
going
writing
on?
notes to each other.
So I observed that my students were not engaged. So what I did was I did something that's known as reflection in action.
Reflection in action. Huh.
And I changed my approach in the moment. I observed in the moment what wasn't working and I changed it. So what I did instead was I broke everybody into pairs. I wrote 3 simple words on the board. Think about the topic, talk with your partner, and then we will share with the class. Mm-hmm. So we worked in pairs and practiced think, pair, share. And so then finally, what I realized from that is that rather than over explaining, just start with pair activities. And pair activities are a great way for students to feel safe, to be able to share with a partner and get their ideas formulated, and then to share with the whole class. Mm-hmm. Think, pair, share. So my action item moving forward then was to use think, pair, share, especially for student engagement, because all of the students were engaged when they were working with a partner.
unless their partner happened to be me in that school when I was talking all the time and didn't listen. Shame
Yes.
on me. Anyway.
But the beautiful thing about that was that you learned from that experience and you actually became a better teacher.
So what seemed like a bad experience became a really good outcome.
Yes, a wonderful learning experience for you as a teacher. And that's what we want. So we're going to close with a little activity for you. And just one more time to review the experiential learning cycle. So you describe what happened using the facts. You think about what helped or hindered your students, analyzing what happened, and then you come up with a general rule for how you can help students learn. And then finally, you think about how to apply that in the future. So here is an optional activity for you. Miriam, would you share this?
Okay, so if you would like to do this, it's very helpful and kind of fun. So you might want to think of an experience that you had where you can reflect on the experiential learning cycle for you. So number one was what happened. Describe it just using neutral facts. Number two, what did you learn? And analyze what helped or hindered. Number three, what did you decide? What did you generalize as a new rule you're going to try? And four, what did you apply and take and put into action in your classroom?
All right.
Thank you.
So that's it for today.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Happy teaching, happy learning.
Yes.
Good luck.
Good luck and have fun.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye, gang.